to see me as a partner and advocate of disabled people is something that not everyone could see that.
People with disabilities are seen as marginalized in our society, and how they could get people who are interested in their businesses. So I believe it will be quite challenging for them.
The most important source of support outside the Access to Work Award is not a government scheme or a bank loan. It's often each other. Shared knowledge, shared contacts, shared resilience.
Sometimes I think intellectual capacity does help a blind person to understand more differentiation, more variation in life,
That disabled people are not waiting for the economic agency that you would expect from government. They're actually getting on and doing these things on their own, so often in spite of those systems.
It is really important that when we begin working with children from birth who are blind, or when we're working through rehabilitation of people who are advantageously blind, where they lost their vision later in life due to an illness or a disease, how do we support the psychosocial aspects of moving forward in life?
So one of the challenges for blind people is how to promote their business in social media. It is a challenge for them to produce a video or a photo that would attract people to buy their products.
It's a wonderful initiative.
The Global South Network opened new horizons for judicial cooperations.
Global South Network provide a platform for meaningful dialogue and cooperation, fostering efforts to build a more equitable and resilient legal landscape.
GSN network continues to expand areas of activity, further strengthening its impact and reach.
The universal concept of justice compels us to join our efforts, and this is the forum for promoting the same goal.
Well deserved for the hectic activity you have made. I am astonished, I am amazed, I was impressed.
May I at the outset commend you, Dr. Ayad, for the immense work that you're doing in the GSN. The Global South Network is a much admired initiative.
It's commendable. South Network focuses on all disciplines and regions, creating a bridge between academia, civil society, legal community, etc.
We are being criticized for doing our job and for upholding the federal constitution. Like I have said in the past, I will not bend to such lame pressures and insinuations.
Dr. Norman Riat, the founder and convener of the Global South Network, visionary leadership has established a vibrant forum where judges, academics, and practitioners from around the world can share and exchange ideas.
I would like to point out that Dr. Riat's initiatives have not only enriched comparative judicial dialogue, have also fostered mutual understanding of the diverse challenges that courts face in safeguarding the rule of law and constitutionalism.
After all, what would you do as a colonizer from the global north, conditioned by a systemic othering mindset and driven by economic lust built on commodification, including the commodification of human beings?
This last question is not so easy, a bit complicated.
The Global South Network
provides an important space to share experiences and learn good practices from one another.
Dialogue takes on a particular importance thanks to Global South Network, which allow us to believe in a better world of the rule of law.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's my great pleasure to welcome you all to the 21st seminar in Phase 5 of the International Interdisciplinary PhD in Progress weekly seminar series organized by the Global South Network. I would like to start the session with some introductions. I'm Dr. Novsyaroni, lecturer in law at the Leicester Law School, founder and chief convener of the Global South Network. My research interest lies within the areas of constitutionalism, judicial independence, rule of law, and I've been running these sessions since March 2023. It's a pleasure to chair today's Global South Network PhD in Progress session, and I look forward to learning about the presenters' research and engaging in the discussion that follows. I'm joined by two discussants and one peer commentator. Jacqueline Winstanley is the first discussant for today's session. Jacqueline is a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts and a global strategist, innovator, and recognized expert in inclusive entrepreneurship. She's a founder and chief executive officer of Universal Inclusion, the Inclusive Entrepreneur Network, and Universal Artificial Intelligence. In that capacity, she has spent her career dismantling barriers to opportunity for disabled people and underrepresented groups. As secretariat to the all-party parliamentary group for inclusive entrepreneurship and good work for disabled people, she has shaped policy in the UK and internationally. She's a visiting fellow and entrepreneur in residence at Birkbeck Center for Innovation Management Research. She's a featured presenter at the United Nations and co-author of Road to Wonder. Jacqueline is one of the foremost voices driving inclusive economic growth worldwide. Dr. Erika Fundelius is the second discussant for today's session. Dr. Fundelius is an assistant professor at the Faculty of Education, Educational and Counselling Psychology and Special Education at the University of British Columbia, Vancouver. She is a career educator with decades of experience across multiple contexts, age groups, and ability levels. Her primary teaching focus is within the visual disabilities program. Her research interests lie in improving teacher preparation for those who intend to become teachers of students with visual impairments and developing effective professional development opportunities for in-service educators using a range of methodologies. Her main research project is centered around and deeply committed to consent education, particularly as it relates to personal and professional interactions and how cultural perspectives can shape understanding of physical touch and the concept of consent. Mohammed Novsyaroni Umar is the peer commentator for today's session. Umar is a PhD candidate in Media and Communications at the University of Sydney, Australia. His doctoral research, titled Instagram-Based Disability Activism in Indonesia, examines the role of social media in disability advocacy and public engagement. He serves as postgraduate representative at Sydney Southeast Asia Centre and is a student member of the Centre for Disability Research and Policy. His research interests include disability studies, digital media, social activism, communication, and Southeast Asian studies. Finally, it's my great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for today's seminar, Menik Budiarti, who is currently pursuing her PhD at the School of Sociology and Social Policy, University of Leeds. Her ongoing PhD focuses on disability issues. She has been working professionally around disability issues for 18 years in Indonesia and doing voluntary works among those years in disability sector in Indonesia, Australia, and currently in the United Kingdom. Today, Menik will present part of their PhD project titled Blind and Visually Impaired People Building Businesses in Indonesia. She will speak for about 30 to 35 minutes, followed by 5 to 10 minutes of comments from our discussant. And if time permits, we will then open the floor for a 15-minute question and answer session with the audience. Menik, we are delighted to have you with us today. The screen is now yours.
Good afternoon. My name is Menik Budiarti. First of all, I would like to thank you for the opportunity offered to me to share my ongoing work to the Global South Network. I am a third-year postgraduate researcher at the School of Sociology and Social Policy in the University of Leeds. I came from Indonesia and moved to Leeds in 2023 to pursue a doctorate degree. In Indonesia, I have been working for the Ministry of Social Affairs for more than 18 years, and most of those years I spent working with disabled people, in particular blind and visually impaired people. I did my master's degree in Flinders University in South Australia in 2013 to 2014 under the Australian Award Scholarship. My master thesis was discussing about the strategies to overcome the challenges encountered by blind and visually impaired male who marry sighted women. At that time, I chose this topic because there were a lot of challenges happen to not only blind and visually impaired people who are going to marry sighted people, but also to disabled people who are going to marry another disabled person. At that time, there were a lot of doubt, stigma, prejudice, and discrimination that concluded into a mistrust of whether a disabled person could lead a marriage life. So that's why I chose that topic for my master thesis. And as for my doctorate degree, I realized that there are still very limited research and expert on disability sectors in Indonesia, and that in order to put the disability issue into not only mainstream, but also focus on priority of policymaking, it would take more than just extra effort, but as well as disability experts and activists to work together and focus on the same thing. Since the majority of my career life is spent around disability issues, most of my concern is on employment for disabled people, and that I saw that in the past 5 to 10 years, there are numbers of blind and visually impaired people who try to run a micro business, including my own husband, but there were still very limited support from the government, and that there were still very limited research on this topic alone. That was why the topic research that I chose for my doctorate study is entrepreneurship among blind and visually impaired people. I believe that my professional expertise, educational background, and my personal experience as a wife of a totally blind man who's also owning and managing a micro business would be a game changer for my research. And as of today, I am going to present the initial finding from my study on blind and visually impaired people building businesses in Indonesia. This presentation will be divided into 4 sections. That is background, research question, methodology, and initial result. Let's move on to the background of the study. I will start with the data on disabled people in Indonesia. The study aims to explore the lived experience of blind and visually impaired people performing entrepreneurship in Indonesia and its impact towards the enhancement of their quality of life. Research on entrepreneurship among disabled people were often overlooked and unreached, since it was assumed that entrepreneurship was only performed by non-disabled people. Despite the ratification of the UN CRPD in 2011 by the Indonesian government and legal transformation through Act number 8, year 2016 on disabled people, however, the implementation is still far from what is expected. Among the total population of disabled people in Indonesia, there were 20.4 million, or about more than half of disabled people in the working age, as reported by the Statistics Indonesia in 2023. According to the data shared by Statistics Indonesia, blind and visually impaired people is the largest disabled group, with 8.3 million blind people in total. However, half of those numbers, that is 4.08 million, are aged between 60 to 64 years old with only near visual impairment, which means only half of those numbers were aged between 5 to 59 years old. And furthermore, it could not be decided how many of them experienced total blindness, because half of those numbers are only experienced near visual impairment. The working age group of blind people are about 4.2 million, which is more than 50% of the total population. However, there was no data on how many are employed or unemployed and the type of work they do. As for the MSMEs, micro, small, and medium enterprises, in most countries, including in Indonesia, MSMEs create the largest gross domestic products, or GDP, and contributed almost 70% of employment as reported in 2023. Their ability to recognize and take full advantage of opportunities emerged from innovation and market changes has become one of their strengths in filling in the gaps of a different particular market and keep changing along with the market change. However, MSMEs may emerge due to the unavailability of employment, that the only option for employment is to start a small or micro business. Data on the growth of MSMEs in Indonesia as displayed in the presentation from 2015 to 2023 showed a significant rise, that is from 59 million to 67 million in total. For developing countries in particular, MSMEs foster higher job creation and employment growth, equalize income and wealth distribution, encourage women and disadvantaged group empowerment, and increase industry decentralization, which help maintain socio-economic stability. In 1996, MSMEs in Indonesia contributed more than 60% employment and 10% value added, which was higher compared to other East Asian countries. The number then increased. In 1997, MSMEs created 72% employment in industrial sector and contributed 32% of Indonesian industrial GDP. And then in 2023, it created 60.5% GDP and 96.9% of national total employment in Indonesia. How about MSMEs among disabled people? According to the Ministry of Labor, in 2021, there were only 4.7 million who were in the workforce or having paid or unpaid employment. In the meantime, the Indonesian Annual National Labor Force Report stated that there were approximately 2.7 million disabled people who start their own business without staff, or have unpaid or freelance staff, or have full-time and paid staff. The number presented is equal to 57%, more than half of the workforce of disabled people actually run micro-business, which is significant. Meanwhile, one of NGO in Indonesia, Prakarsa, reported in 2022 that of the total of disabled workforce, there were 30% disabled people who are self-employed. 26% are self-employed with unpaid help, which means 50%, more than 50% in total who work in self-employment sector. It can be seen that self-employment dominated the employment sector for disabled people in Indonesia. So then why entrepreneurship? For my research, there have not been many studies regarding entrepreneurship among disabled people, as I mentioned earlier, particularly in Indonesia, especially one that comprehensively discusses about the growth of entrepreneurship and its impact towards their quality of life. Since blind and visually impaired people is the largest group of disabled people in Indonesia, and that self-employment is statistically more accessible for this group, and research on entrepreneurship among disabled people were often overlooked. Thus, I consider it is significant to study the entrepreneurship among blind and visually impaired people and its impact to their quality of life. Well, there are several research questions that I propose for my project, but the research question for today is, what are the contributing factors for blind and visually impaired people in Indonesia to initiate and develop their business? To answer that question, I would like to explain about my methodology. So this study is undertaken through qualitative approach using in-person, in-depth, semi-structured interview, online focus group discussion, and key person interview. Ethic was given by the University of Leeds Research Ethics Committee for Business, Environment, and Social Sciences. The participants were gathered using snowball sampling through two major blind people organizations in Indonesia, that is ITMI and Pertuni, and my personal contact. ITMI is a blind Muslim community in Indonesia, while Pertuni is a general blind community. The initial contact was made through email, but also using WhatsApp as in Indonesia, WhatsApp is the main communication. And most blind people, including the organization members and the potential participants, are preferred WhatsApp to communicate rather than email. However, WhatsApp was only used to make contact and set appointment. There was no crucial data shared through the app. About using WhatsApp, I have an experience that there was a bit challenges when I proposed to use WhatsApp. I mean, probably since it is uncommon in UK education system, or perhaps in my school, to contact research participants using personal chat application. However, a thorough explanation was given before ethics was provided. So finally, the ethics was given, but I have to explain it carefully about the different situation between research in UK and research in Indonesia. And then as I was using snowball sampling, in order to avoid similar socioeconomic and cultural background, which might result from snowball sampling in the same location, hence the study was undertaken in three major areas in Java Island. So Java Island is, let's assume that most of you don't know Indonesia. So Java Island is where the capital city of Indonesia is located. So that was where my research, my fieldwork was undertaken. So three major areas in Java Island and their nearest most vibrant smaller cities. That is, the first area is Jakarta and its surrounding. You may often heard it is called as Jabodetabek. So Jakarta and its surrounding cities, small cities. That is the first area. The second area is in Bandung and Cimahi. Cimahi is like Leeds and Sheffield. So it's like that. And then the third area is Semarang. Semarang is the capital city of Central Java province, located exactly in the central part of Java Island. These cities were also chosen in order to see whether location have any impact to access experienced by the participants, including access for business license, funding, and etc. The interview participants consisted of 30 blind people aged between 25 to 57 years old and have run entrepreneurship for at least 2 years. I chose 2 years because it is considered to be sufficient for a micro business to be stable, to start to gain profit, and to start to grow, as pointed out by several research, and that would enable the participants to afford their lives or to contribute to the family's income. Additionally, 2 years is also considered as the most crucial period for micro business to either grow or fail. There were 23 male participants and 7 male participants. 10 participants were located in Bandung and Cimahi, 5 were in Semarang, and 15 were in Jakarta and surrounding area. 6 were single, 6 participants were divorced, and 18 were married. Of the divorced participants, 3 were male and the other 3 were female, whom also a single mother. So I have 3 single mothers as my participants. A semi-structured interview was used to explore the lived experience and personal accounts of the blind and visually impaired people performing entrepreneurship. The FGD and key person participants were the members and administrators of ITMI and Pertuni within the location of the research. That is Jakarta, West Java, and Semarang, which allowed 10 participants to join, 5 male and 5 female. So there are 5 male and 5 female joining the FGD and key person participants. As for Bandung and Cimahi, the FGD participant was not limited only to these 2 cities, but to the whole province, that is West Java, which based on the availability of the organization's members and administrators to join the FGD. Yeah, the FGD was undertaken online in order to avoid transport issues, as all the participants are blind, were in different locations, and have different schedules. In addition, FGD Online was also preferred in order to minimize research expense and to adapt with the limited time, because I am under a scholarship, so it's very limited in funding. And then the FGD was using Zoom application, where each group consists of 4 participants. The participants from Jakarta area were only 2 people from one organization, because the other organization sort of like believe that they don't know what is entrepreneurship, so they refuse to take part. So thus the key person interview took place for these 2 people from our organization. And then the researcher positionality. I realized it may raise concern for some researcher. I share the same nationality as the participants, that is Indonesia, which is also the location of the study. I have been working on disability issues for more than 18 years and do voluntary works with blind people more than 15 years. I am also a wife of a blind entrepreneur. Those factors equip me with knowledge, connection, and skill that would assist me during this study. However, I am not a blind person. I do not have the lived experience and the understanding of their feelings, their choices, their preferences. So this combination somehow balances my approach to this study, since I have to be careful not to let my knowledge and experience cause me to jump into conclusion, frame the research into what I expect to, and to let myself think that I know better than the participant themselves and the account they shared. Yet, I am also able to utilize my personal background and relationship to help me connect and comprehend the participants' accounts. So my position in this study is I am in the inside, but not too deep, and also in the outside, but not too far. Something like that. So next, I'm going to share the initial result. There are several themes found in this study, but for today, I am going to share the first theme, that is personal characters, or here I wrote personal factors. Research on personal characters or traits that foster positive or negative action are massive, including research on how one's personal qualities influence entrepreneurial activities. However, research on blind and visually impaired people characteristics that impacted their entrepreneurial activities are limited. The characteristics are not only limited to those fostering the development of the entrepreneurship, but also those that restricting the activities. Findings in the study showed how personal characters influence the participants' entrepreneurial activities both positively and negatively. But for today, I only share the characters that that positively influence the activity. The first factor is self-confidence. Kullinger, in his study on entrepreneurial innovativeness, suggested that the innovation showed by entrepreneurs are affected not only by environmental factors, but also by personal traits, including self-confidence, which found to be a determiner in the entrepreneurial activity. This is actually shown by one of the participants, which their accounts I quoted in this presentation. The participants demonstrate self-confidence, which foster their endeavor and entrepreneurship, even though there seems to be a distinction between male and female participants. So until now, I found out that there is a difference on the level of self-confidence among female and male participants. Most male participants show more self-confidence, but female participants sort of like a little bit pull themselves. They don't want to admit themselves as entrepreneurs. They just want to see themselves as someone who tried to have a better life. So the quote that I wrote in my presentation, it depicted this statement shared by Collinger. I initiated the fertilizer business. Now my brother got it all well. The business has already been running. So one of the participants shared his story on how he built fertilizer business in his village. So this participant is in Semarang. He used to live in a village when he was young before he got married. And then people used to buy the fertilizer from out of town, from big cities, which is far from his village. But when he got involved into farming, asked by his parents, he not only he saw there was a problem needed to be solved, but also he saw potential for building economic activity. So he started to sell fertilizer to the people in his village so that they do not have to buy from outside of town anymore. He provided solution for the people in his village. And when he finally left his parents' home to start his own family, moved to another area, he left the business for his brother. Yet before he moved out of town, he has started a new business different from the one he left his brother, that he still managed until today and became his main source of income. It can be seen that his self-confidence to start something new, even though people hasn't started before, that was not that before that actually brought him into entrepreneurship. The second factor is determination. Previous studies found that determination or self-drive as one of the prominent factors of entrepreneurship, both for disabled and non-disabled people. Yoni in 2024 found that self-drive is one of the factors enabling the entrepreneurial activity in Ethiopian family, whereas Samar Ali and Rashid found internal drive as influencing factors for entrepreneurship among disabled people. The findings show that determination performed long before they started the business. So it usually start when they were still young, and that they seem to always find ways to overcome the challenges despite there is a long process to get into where they are, and acceptance towards life, but also drive for something better. The most prominent determination displayed to date were from the participants who lost their previous lives due to their blindness and then strive to be successful again. Some of the participants used to be a sighted person, but then in some time in their life, they lost their sight and become blind. One of the quotes that I wrote in my presentation, it's not from the people who lost their sight, but from one of the single mother. She said that just move forward and never back down because money would be available if I tried to look for it. Just don't complain, be grateful. I mean, from this account, we can see her hope, her determination to create a better life for her and her daughter, no matter what. As a single mother, she shared how she strived to earn income and afford an income to afford her and her daughter livelihood. It is something that I think as a single mother who not lives in a big cities like Jakarta, because this one account is shared from someone who lives in West Java. She tried to do whatever she can to earn income, and that kind of determination that fostered them to manage their entrepreneurship. The findings I shared today is just a glimpse of the whole findings, which I am now still in the process of analyzing and writing it. Yet I hope it could add insights into the discussion of disability topic, entrepreneurship, as well as the Global South context. Once again, I thank you for the opportunity. I look forward to your questions, feedback, and input, of course. Thank you very much. I will hand the microphone back to Dr. Riayat.
Thank you, Menik, for a fascinating and thought-provoking presentation that highlighted both the challenges and remarkable entrepreneurial contributions of blind and visually impaired people in Indonesia. We are very grateful for your insights and for sharing this important part of your doctoral research with us. I will now invite our first discussant, Jacqueline Winstanley, to offer her comments and reflections on the presentation. Over to you, Jacqueline.
So first of all, thank you for the very kind invitation. I was delighted to be asked to contribute to the session. It's such an important issue within which my own research continues. It was really interesting to listen to the presentation today, and it was quite refreshing to see the detail that was in the presentation, and that the researcher had actually decided to focus on one particular area of disabled people. So what I wanted to do was particularly talk about the fact that the research sits in micro businesses, which is really important and often goes undiscovered within global countries when people focus on employment and not necessarily either resourcing or appreciating the value that micro businesses bring to the economy, and even more so that disabled people bring to the economy. So to see this as being positioned as a survival and empowerment strategy for blind and visually impaired people in Indonesia, which is so underrepresented, and Menik is providing such rich data, and as she was speaking, what came back to me time and time again is a global lack of data in this area. So to see this on the lived experience of this group of people, who are not only the largest group within the broader community of disabled people, but amongst the most disadvantaged in terms of access to education and employment. And to see this as how this element of business as a response to that exclusion is an extremely powerful one. It tells us that disabled people are not waiting for the economic agency that you would expect from government. They're actually getting on and doing these things on their own, so often in spite of those systems that are so lacking. And that's not something that's just in Indonesia, that's a universal one. And I'd like to make reference to a particular piece of work in the United Kingdom, which fully funds the practical support of disabled people to create enterprise, and has done so since 1994. And it's seen such growth because of that. However, the shift in global responses to diversity and inclusion has recently seen that valuable support be dismantled. And it's extremely difficult for disabled people at the moment in the UK to apply, renew, or actually retain that valuable piece of support. And I think this research, that's what makes this research that we're seeing today extremely important, because we can see what value disabled people bring to this sector. What we can also see is what wonderful things and how much more could come from this when Treasury input into the sector is put in as a right. So from my point of view, I think probably two things I'd like to just point on that I picked up was the 57% of micro businesses within Indonesia are run by, if you know, the growth in the employed arena, this is surpassing that growth. And that the number of disabled people who are in that percentage as well. It was both pleasing to see, but equally, again, to recognise how challenging it continues to be. Okay. So I have two questions to put to the researcher today. And the first one is, the most important source of support outside the Access to Work Award is not a government scheme or a bank loan. It's often each other. Shared knowledge, shared contacts, shared resilience. And I wanted to know if Menik's finding evidence of peer networks and solidarity among the visually impaired and blind entrepreneurs in her study. And secondly, my question is, what can policymakers in the global north learn from the entrepreneurship models emerging in Indonesia? The most innovative thinking about inclusive entrepreneurship can be seen when government investment is notable by its absence, and that's mirrored globally. So much is being done, often on so little. And we see the heights that people soar to, and even more so should it be prioritised. So there's real policy learning here. And I'd like to close with something that just struck me so strongly. It was a pleasure to meet and listen to Menik, because what she's brought to the session today is something rare. There's still a lack of research in this area. What she's brought is both academic rigour and also lived experience. And I understand she very modestly distanced herself slightly from her husband's lived experience. She has her own lived experience, and I do think that's brought something to the table. She understands this community, not only from the outside as a researcher, but from the inside as an advocate for disabled people. And I look forward to the Q&A and to following this work as it develops. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline, for those insightful and constructive reflections. Your comments have helped us to think more deeply about the broader implications of Menik's research and have enriched our discussion considerably. It is now my pleasure to invite Dr. Fundelius to share her comments and questions. Dr. Fundelius, over to you, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me and having this opportunity to provide some thoughts from my experience as both educator, researcher, and teacher of those who are blind or low vision. Unequivocally, I know nothing about business development. However, I have to pose it or pose my comments around my experience working with this population for the last 2 decades. I do have one data that I looked up because I'm very familiar with it. So I guess my positionality is I am an immigrant from Eastern Europe, so I have a very different cultural background where I'm at currently. And I'm very familiar with how Europe is still viewing disabilities, especially I'm from Hungary, so we're still very much not quite as integrated as if it could be. But most of my work has been done in the United States, and there is a law since 1936, the Randolph-Shepard Act, which specifically was created to provide employment and self-support for blind individuals for operating vending machines. So there is a program in the US that is supporting business entrepreneurship programs. And that is how far my knowledge of micro businesses and entrepreneurship goes. And I will leave that up to the expert, Jacqueline, in terms of employment. However, my work and the things that I focus on is why is there a 20% unemployment or underemployment, nearly 30% unemployment rate of people with disabilities globally? That is one of the outcomes that I'm looking at through education. In the education of blind and low vision people, there is a disability-specific curriculum called the Expanded Core Curriculum that encompasses career skills as well as self-determination. And that's where I got hooked on the presentation, especially since determination was one of the main areas of the presentation. In quality of life outcomes, employment being one of the areas that provide security and provide the means to actually have a quote unquote life where you can do things to beyond survival. It is really important that when we're begin working with children from birth who are blind, or when we're working through rehabilitation of people who are advantageously blind, where they lost their vision later in life due to an illness or a disease, how do we support the psychosocial aspects of moving forward in life? there's a big difference, and I think this would be one of my feedback to look at in the data, is when we have people who are born blind, which is generally around 10% globally. So most people are not completely blind. But if children are born with a advanced visual impairment, their concept development and how they are approaching the world is going to be different from those who have had sight but have lost their vision through to a disease or illness later on. And that difference between how we come to life and how we get to see the world is going to be different. So even within a culture, how we approach instruction and what are the areas that we focus on and what are the incidental learning. So learning by sight, by accident, is how most of the 80% of our learning happens by accident and just observations. If a person have lost their sight advantageously, they have a lot of knowledge that they have been able to take on. For example, the fertilizer business person, I think you mentioned that, or maybe I'm mixing up with the young lady, the single mom, who was advantageously blind. They have a lot of knowledge that a person who is completely blind from birth would have in terms of how to approach life in general. But I think I would like to focus more on your qualitative methodology. So beyond how to view people with visual impairment. I would have loved to know, and I'm sure this is going to be flushed out through the dissertation process, a little bit more about the coding processes, that how these themes have been found, and what are the key strategies that are ensuring that there is rigor in the thematic analysis that is being done. Positionality is super important, and you have mentioned how you position yourself within the analysis of the data. And just would love to know more. So that would be one of my questions of how that is being approached. And particularly kind of a personal question almost. I am doing research in Turkey with Turkish colleagues, and we had to really be careful about translation processes and how do we approach translation and understanding of the data, because my research that is in English does not quite translate to the environment. So there is this almost like a dichotomy of like how the cultural differences are going to be affecting what is being read and understood. I think those were the two things, and then just really focusing more on maybe the processes of how blind people are treated within the culture and how that affects that only, I think when I researched it, about 40% were employed, something like that. And that's where I will leave my comments, and we can come back to conversation later.
Thank you, Dr. Fundelius, for your insightful contribution and to stimulate such a rich discussion. Your comments have highlighted the wider significance of the issues raised today and have given us much to reflect upon. We now turn to another fascinating perspective on disability, communication, and social change. It is my pleasure to welcome Mohammed Novsyaroni Umar, PhD candidate in Media and Communications at the University of Sydney, Australia. Mohammed, we are delighted to have you with us and look forward to your input. Over to you, please.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Hello from Sydney. My name is Umar, but Aussies call me Umar, so feel free to use your own dialect. And I am an Indonesian, happy to support Mbak Menik, or it's actually better to say Bu Menik, yeah, because she has 18 years of expertise. As a context, I was born with a physical disability on my both hands, so I have a lived experience, and I also have anxiety and depression disorder. And it's amazing to see a fellow disability scholar from Indonesia, which I also agree that we have very limited scholars that work on this issue, especially in this blindness and also visual disabilities. And also we share the same scholarship from the Indonesia's Ministry of Finance. So it's a great project, I believe. My only comment is on the use of the terminology, which is visually impaired. Because in my research, when I talked with these people with disabilities, they don't quite agree with the use of impairment or impaired as the use of disability term. So I think it might be better to use visual disabilities or blindness and other visual disabilities because it's more universal. And also, as you mentioned, Indonesia has ratified the UNCRPD as well. And we have the change of term from cacat or impairment into disabilitas or disability. So it might be good to use a more universal and desirable term in this research. That's the first one. And then it's very interesting that our finding is quite similar, especially the fieldwork process itself, because when it comes to those empowered disability, it is still limited to those people who live in Java Island, where Menik also done the research mainly in Jabodetabek, in Jakarta and its surrounding areas. But my question is more about we presented about the confidence, the determination. So I would like to know about the challenges. What are kind of the challenges aside from their disability condition in building these businesses? Is there any like cultural factor or maybe education or maybe communication with the surroundings and how they promote their business? Because again, people with disabilities are seen as marginalized in our society, and how they could get sort of people who are interested in their businesses. So I believe it will be quite challenging for them. And also, what kind of striking findings that I believe that it's a long process to write and put together everything in your thematic analysis, but I want to know what is the striking findings that you found in your preliminary research, particularly something that is very different from what you experience in the UK. For example, something that you can contribute from Indonesian perspective to the global south. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Umar, for an insightful and thought-provoking contribution. It has been wonderful to see how today's discussion has connected themes of disability, entrepreneurship, activism, and social change across different contexts. Menik, I do not know about you, but I feel it is both a privilege and honor to see the Global South Network continually creating spaces for meaningful dialogue on issues of such significance. I would now like to invite you to respond to the comments and observation offered by our discussant and peer commentator. But before I hand over the virtual floor to you, just to highlight, this is not a PhD Viva, it's a PhD in progress session. So do not feel pressure to answer all questions, entirely up to you. I do appreciate it's a journey. So any questions which you're not able to answer, just feel free to say that you will consider later. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Ayat. I would like to express I feel thank you for the discussant and for my peer commentator, Jacqueline, Erika, and UMAR. I mean, to see me as a partner and advocate of disabled people is something that not everyone could see that. Well, I would like to answer first. I think the question asked by Jacqueline and Umar has some similarity about the research contribution to the global context. But before that, I would like to answer the evidence of whether there is a peer network in my findings between the blind entrepreneurs in Indonesia. So actually, one of the findings that I think I just find out myself is that some of the business similarity between the people in West Java, the participants in West Java and in Semarang, is that they sort of like accept order made from their friends, from their blind friends. So one of the participants in Semarang actually help her blind friends to provide what they need. For example, they have difficulties to cook, so she would offer them to cook for her friends and ask them to pay for it. So it's something that I think interesting because one of the participants in West Java also do that as well, and that is how the community of blind people works. I think that help them develop their business. It's not huge business that you can open a restaurant from that, but it helps you to get by from day to day. It helps you to earn income, not huge, but a small income, and it keeps going. So I think that is something that you cannot find in UK. I think such a tight community between blind people. Yeah, and then. As for the terminology, I realized that it is something that is very sensitive among Indonesian, particularly disabled people in Indonesia. There are debates before the UN CRPD is ratified, and until now, there is debate about whether to use, like Umar said, visual impairment or impaired or disability. I actually discussed that in my transfer document, my proposal about the disability terminology. But I choose visual impairment because I consider my audience as in the UK, and because some of them is not really blind. I mean, some of them are low vision, and the level of low vision of everyone might different. That's why I use visual impairment. But again, I would see that in the next phase whether I need to change that or not. And then I'm sorry, Erika, because your question is more depth about my methodology. So if that's okay, I would like to answer that after this one. Yeah. Thank you. So the challenges of how they build their businesses, whether culture or acceptance or something else. But because Umar is media communication, right? Your background is media communication. So one of the challenges for blind people is how to promote their business in social media. It is a challenge for them to produce a video or photo that would attract people to buy their products. I think that is one of the challenges that I can find until now, but I haven't been able to go in depth to that theme because I haven't arrived there yet. Yeah. Yeah. And then for Erika, I know it's probably interesting for you to see how blind people could get so much information, especially when they are blind since born. Yeah, I realized that. You know, if I may use the example of my husband, my husband is blind since born, And I have one best friend who's blind, who acquired his blindness when he's high school. They have different self-confidence, level of self-confidence. They're both male, but they have different self-confidence. But sometimes I think intellectual capacity does help a blind person to understand more differentiation, more variation in life. Yeah. And this person who is actually selling fertilizer, he's very smart. Right now, he's managing a electric shop. He sells electric stuff. And he managed to sort of like making a bell in his shop door. So when people come, he doesn't have to check. He knows that someone come, but because it's an outskirt of Semarang. So he used his own technology to do that. Yeah. He even learned computer, he even ordered buy computer before he learned to use computer. So he tried to use the computer first before learning how to use computer. So I think the difference of intellectual level is also, influence the way they understand about life. But again, that is my part of my research. I mean, it could be different in different places. Yeah, and that I realize it could be challenging to. I mean, because you said that you have research in Turkey, whereas you are a Hungarian who have you live in Canada or US? Yeah, in Canada. So it could be challenging in understanding their culture. I did as well. So I made a mistake before I approached my potential participants. I was once told to whether I can gather how many people that would like to be my participants. My supervisors told me that, and then I tried to, through my husband, I tried to approach the blind people community, disabled people community. But then I used a too sophisticated term that make them that is not me. I use entrepreneurship and gig economy, which is too sophisticated for common people. And that when I told the story to my supervisor, they told me that you don't have to use those terms. You just explained it as you talk every day. So I avoid those terms, and I stopped the approaching the potential participants, and I just quit, and I start approaching them in the next year. So in the following year. So that is, cultural differences, socioeconomic level does have challenges. Yeah. I think so, Dr. Riayat.
Thank you. Just because we have already run out of time and reached the end of the session, but I can pick up one question. So just to make it sure that we give opportunity to all to participate. Is there any comment and question from attendees? If not, any follow-up, small, brief, crisp question or comment from panelists, discussant, or peer commentator. So thank you very much, Menik, for such an insightful and stimulating presentation. Your work, in my opinion, makes a valuable contribution to broader discussion on disability and business activities, and it has given us much to reflect on. My heartfelt thanks go to our excellent discussants, Jacqueline and Dr. Fundelius, and our peer commentator, UMAR, for their thoughtful and engaging feedback. And to everyone who joined us today for your participation and support. The Global South Network warmly welcomes PhD students from all disciplines and from every corner of the world to share their research and receive interdisciplinary feedback. If you are interested in presenting your work or taking part in a future session in any capacity, discussant, peer commentator, or a guest speaker, please contact me. feel free to contact me at the email address leicgsn@gmail.com. Same day, same time next week. Let's meet our next guest speaker, Akshat Chaudhary, PhD candidate, Department of Sociology, University of York, who will present part of their PhD project titled The Experiences and Spatial Visibility of Queer Pakistani Individuals in Manchester on 10th of June from 3 to 4 p.m. Until then, goodbye, everyone, and thank you once again for being with us. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye. Bye.
Thank you.